Flat Cafe Racer. I think what I'm going to do here today is I'm going to change the gearing on my Thruxton R. I still have one of the sprockets on the front sprocket on the Thruxton R from Bonneville. I got a 17 tooth on it right now. I think I'm going to change it to a 16 tooth so I'll have my stock gearing on it. That's in case Mr. Bill sneaks up on me with that big old Rocket 3. Stay tuned. Really, it's not much to do on this. I've changed these sprockets out a lot of times, and I do get kind of forgetful sometimes, but you take this cover off, and there's a little plastic, the reservoir underneath it for the coolant. You take that out. Then I use the air impact gun to get it off, so I'll make sure I put it in gear before I take all this stuff off, and we'll see. Clarify, when I said these two covers come off, I mean they come off. If you just take this off, they'll both come off. Next, we're going to remove this 10 millimeter and this 10 millimeter, and we'll go remove it from this clip right there and kind of pull this back. When you pull this back, you want to make sure that you pay attention to the routing of this particular hose. You're not going to remove this one, but there's another one right inside here. You're going to remove that one and this one to get this little cover off. Unclip this right here. You unclip that. These two bolts that I just removed are different size. So this particular longer one goes up into here, and a shorter one goes right into here. And it's also held, when you put the cover back on, it'll be held up right in here. I think it's always a good opportunity when you take these things off is to go ahead and clean them up a little bit and get some of the grit and grime out of there. Once you get to this point, what we're going to be doing is straighten up the tabs on this lock washer here, and on mine I have it bent over twice. Usually you only see it once, so we're going to do that, then we can take this nut off. I truly don't know which one of these. You can reuse these things sometimes a couple times, but today I'm going to put a brand new one on. But you can see I've got some of the used ones here, from not so bad to worst I wouldn't use except in an emergency. So you can, like I said, most of the time you can use those over more than once. So the tabs are straightened up. Just use basically a chisel and a hammer to kind of straighten those up. And now with the chain on there, I can go ahead and break that nut loose with the impact gun. Now you'll need a 36 millimeter socket to break loose this thing, and I keep mine torqued to a little over 100 foot-pounds on 100, but I think the spec actually calls for more than that, but I don't do mine. I've never done it more than that, so stand by. Good thing to do is to pay attention to which way this comes off. I'm going to take a little bit of this rust off here, but this is the inside. It's got like a little lip on it, and the outside doesn't. Okay, so I'm going to clean this off just a little bit. The thing I used to kind of clean a little bit of this rust off here was this little brush and a little Scotch-Brite here, scuffing pad. Then I'm going to put a little ACF 50 on it for the corrosion, help prevent the corrosion. Then we'll take this all one off here. We're probably going to loosen up the back wheel, scoot it forward so we can makes it easier taking one off and putting a new one back on. So I loosened up the back wheel and pushed it forward just a little bit so I can take this 17-tooth sprocket on. Now I'll wiggle the 16-tooth on. Just for informational purposes, I don't see that there's any difference in the sprockets either side. So, you know, which way is, there's not, I don't think there's like a right way or a wrong way for these sprockets to go on. Now it's a kind of wiggly bit to get this back on because you got to fit up over this. So you want to make sure you get it on and pushed all the way up against. But what happens is if you put the chain in the sprocket, then take it back out of gear so you can turn it, then you can kind of eventually you can wiggle it back on here pretty easy. Sometimes it's a little harder if you do. You can put the sprocket on pretty easy, but then it gets a little hard to put the chain on. I prefer to put the chain on the sprocket and just turn it until it slips in. Okay, I've got the new one of these washers on, and I've tightened it up just a little bit finger tight. Then I'm going to pull the wheel back to put some tension on this chain, and I got it back in gear. Then once I tighten it with the air gun here, then I can bend one of these tabs over. Now, the hardest part for me is to readjust the chain. So I've got the chain adjusted. I've got a little red, I don't know if you can see this in here or not. Is that one link? It's marked red. That's usually the loosest part of my chain. And I usually put that right there, and I'll double check, make sure it's the loosest part, but I'll put that right there and I'll adjust the chain. And once I get this tightened back up on here, I'll adjust the chain again, or I'll look at it, make sure it hasn't moved too much. You can hear my compressor running. I'm going to let it get up to about 105 psi, then I'm going to go over and use the air gun. Once at about 105, now I'm going to do it just a second time till the air pressure goes down to about 80. Then it'll be done. You may want to have to get it started to bend over with this. Then you can kind of finish it off with a punch. He said, finish it off with a punch. That's been over plenty enough right there. Now all we got to do is put it back together. This piece back on, and remember there's a hole up here, so you want to kind of keep that lined up. And you put this longer bolt in here and a shorter bolt in here, and make sure this is hooked back up. Put your overflow tank back on, and there's like a little indentation in this overflow tank, so it's hard to get this tube wrong. So, and you don't have to tighten these 10 millimeters up very tight. Now's a good time to go ahead and check the fluid level while you're here and wipe off some of the dirt and the fingerprints, so it's a lot easier to read. I'm putting this cover back on. I prefer to start with this one because it's got the little metal tank here, and then you can kind of move it around and see how you want to. You see this little, it's a metal piece here from that cover. So if you do that one first, it makes it a little easier. There it is, all back together, no problems. The longest piece it takes for me is to adjust the chain. I get kind of picky on that. I usually run my chain almost a little bit loose, so I'm very careful with that and on the adjustment. So that takes me probably 15 or 20 minutes for my chain adjustment. But the rest of it probably is, I don't know, maybe another hour. So give yourself an hour, 45 minutes if you got a air gun. If you don't, then get a big Cheetah bar and a friend. I hope you liked that. I'm running a stock 1642s on there right now. Like I said, I play around with the sprockets a lot. Some of you know that I do drag racing in Bonneville, so I have run anything from a 16, 17, or 18 on the front to a 42, 40, and 37 on the back, or in combinations of those. And the motor is such a good motor, it pulls almost anything. So right now, if if I can ride this thing, that's probably the best gearing for drag racing, and meet Mr. Build his big old Rocket 3. All right, see you later. Bye-bye. Join me and my friends at Flat Cap Cafe Racer for riding and racing. Please subscribe.